Here's a real life question. Why do people put their parents into nursing homes when they could just take them into their own homes, especially those who have the space? Hey, I'm Ann. Y'all ready to chat? This is a question that just reeks of guilt. I mean, it's hard enough when your loved one has to go to a nursing home than to hear a question like this, don't you think? And believe it or not, during the holidays, this comes up a lot, skilled nursing care or assisted living. And the reason is adult children go home to see their parents. And then they see that dad is early stages or advanced stages of dementia and mom is trying to deal with that, or that mom is bedridden and dad is trying to deal with that. And they didn't realize things were so bad. So although this isn't Cheers, holiday cheer, I thought that this was an appropriate subject. But let me start by saying, I don't want to hear somebody put somebody in the nursing home. That's not what happened. What happened was the individual reached a point where they needed round-the-clock nursing care. That's what happened. Nobody puts anyone anywhere. So let's start with that premise that somebody has reached a point where they need 24/7, 365 nursing care. Funny story when it comes to that. My mother came down to visit me, and she lives up about 9 hours from me, and she lives on her own, and she was about 82 at the time. So she says to me, Ann, I need to start thinking about the future. I might need assisted living at some point, and I want to be near you when I do it. So can we look around and look at some of the assisted living in your area? I said, sure. So we went from assisted living to assisted living, and there are some fabulous places to go. I mean, just fabulous. They're like resorts. Anyway, we went to this one place, and mom wasn't real big on it. It was fancy schmancy, but it just wasn't homey, so she didn't like it very well. Well, anyway, we were giving my name and phone number to all these places so they wouldn't bother her. So I get a phone call from the fancy schmancy place, and he says to me, are you ready to place your mom? I about drove off the road. I mean, this was an independent, plays tennis, goes to book club, quilts, goes to quilting club. I mean, unbelievable woman. Am I going to place her? So I told mom this, and she was just like beside herself. So every time we're talking or she says something silly or we get into an argument, I'll say, you know what, Mom, I can place you. And she just rolls her eyes at me. But in all seriousness, most seniors never need nursing home care. They never need skilled nursing home care. For example, in 2023, there are 55.8 million seniors over the age of 65. Roughly 1.3 million of that 55 million actually end up in skilled nursing care. That's 2.3% of that population, of that 55.8 million population, 2.3%. I mean, that's minuscule when you look at the big picture, but it's not minuscule when it's your parent. And by the way, when somebody is part of that 2.3% and needs nursing care, the spare room down the hall isn't going to work. What does work is medical caretakers. So what are some reasons that somebody has reached a point where they need skilled nursing care? One of them is when they show signs of dementia. Dementia can cause extreme behavioral changes. I mean, they can be violent, spit at you, screaming, I mean, just really aggressive. Or they could be benign and go wandering around the neighborhood when you don't know it. You could be cooking dinner and dad goes wandering out to the interstate. It's almost impossible to take care of somebody who has dementia or Alzheimer's. It's just almost impossible. You never know what's going to happen, and something horrific probably will happen. Another indicator is if they just need 24-hour medical care. They could be bedbound, housebound, wheelchair-bound, and it could actually hurt them not to get 24/7, 365 medical care. For instance, have you ever seen bed sores? I have, and it's not pretty. You have to constantly adjust or turn someone who's bedbound, or they receive these horrific sores. They're horrible looking, and they're very painful. Are you capable of doing this? Most people aren't. So somebody who needs 24-hour medical care cannot be in the spare room down the hall. Before I go any further, let me just ask you if you could thumbs up if you're so inclined, or subscribe. It really helps me out, and I appreciate it. Thank you. Another indicator, probably not so much that skilled nursing care is needed, but maybe assisted living is needed, and that's if there's some forgetfulness or falls, a lot of falls. Now, I'm not saying that if somebody's in skilled nursing care or assisted living care, they're not going to fall. They probably will if they've been falling all over the place at home. But the difference is they're not going to lay there for 5 hours in pain because nobody's around to help them. You're at work. You can't be there all the time. Even if you have some people stopping in periodically, they're not there all the time. Your family member could fall and there's nobody to call, nobody there to help them. So at least if they're in assisted living because they don't need full medical care, you know that somebody's watching out for them. Another thing is forgetfulness, and I'm not talking dementia. I mean, hell, I'm forgetful sometimes. But I'm talking about somebody who just forgets to take their medication, forgets to turn the stove off. These are dangerous things. So if they're in an assisted living environment, this can help them. They'll make sure they take their medication. They'll make sure I don't think they put stoves in the assisted living apartments. So your loved one is much more safe. And finally, there's short-term physical disability. Rehab. I mean, if your loved one has a knee replacement or hip replacement, they can't go right home, and you can't take care of them right away if they come to your house. Eventually you could, but not right away. They need to stay in a skilled nursing facility so they can get rehab and other medical care. And once they're feeling good and they're able to do some walking, then bring them home to the spare room if you can and help them out. When you have a loved one who needs 24-hour nursing care, there's a lot of guilt that goes into taking them to the nursing facility and leaving them. There's a lot of guilt that goes with that, and there shouldn't be. My grandmother reached a point where she needed round-the-clock medical care. She was living alone. We had somebody coming in during the day, but frankly, it just wasn't affordable to have somebody in at night too. So she's alone down there. If there had been a fire or she had gotten sick or fallen, this was before the I've fallen and I can't get up monitors that they have today. So it was a serious situation. And she was having periodically many strokes. Nothing huge, but just enough to impair her a little bit. So the decision was made, and she was in on the decision. She didn't like it, to go to skilled nursing care. And you know what happened? Friends started visiting her. They didn't visit her at the house because they weren't sure if she was okay and able to take visitors. But these people were going to the nursing home to visit other people, so they'd stop by her room. And we'd make sure she had a box of cookies so she could offer them a cookie like she would at her house. And she always kept quarters on hand so she could give somebody a few cents to go buy a soda. And I'm not going to say she was happy in the skilled nursing facility, but she was comfortable. And she lived, I think, 2 years before she finally passed away at 85. So it's not a death knell when somebody has to go to the nursing home. In fact, sometimes they actually will improve because they're getting medical help. So don't feel guilty. So in answer to your question, the spare bedroom isn't going to cut it. This person who has a parent that has a medical need will have to be available 24/7, 365 to help their mother or father. Can't do it. And I don't think most people have a medical degree or other skills to take care of their family member. So whatever you do, don't feel guilty. What do you think? Love to see it in the comments below. Until next time, thanks for the chat.